When Murders at Karlov Manor was spoiled, I knew I had to brew around Insidious Roots, the 2-mana Golgari enchantment that reads, whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 0/1 plant creature token, and then put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. When building around this card, you can go in a few different directions. And to be honest, I couldn't make up my mind.
I choose both.
I blended both of these strategies in today's deck because they allow you to repetitively return creatures from the graveyard, which allows us to make plants with Insidious Roots that grow larger and larger and larger. This interaction was so powerful, it felt unbeatable in today's video. So if you're ready, let's turnip.
They're root vegetables, you get it?
We're kicking off this league on the draw with a very solid opening hand. I'm feeling good. My opponent leads off with Plains into Kami of False Hope, which can only mean one thing. They're on a white martyr deck, a control strategy built around Abiding Grace, which revives 1-cost creatures out of the graveyard every turn. Even though this deck isn't super popular, I'm actually very familiar with it, as I played it for a video last year. My opponent follows up their turn 1 Kami with a turn 2 Martyr, which isn't particularly scary when I have multiple infinite combos in my deck. I ramp my mana and play out Wall of Roots into a Delighted Halfling and pass it back. On turn 3, they establish Abiding Grace, which in combination with their 2 creatures mean they can either gain a ton of life or fog my attacks every turn. But I'm not worried, because activating my Yawgmoth draws me into an Agatha Soul Cauldron, which means I can exile their dumb creatures if they try to pull those shenanigans. I rebuild my board after sacrificing all of my creatures to Yawgmoth, but I guess my Wall of Roots was a little too threatening because I cast Supreme Verdict on their next turn. I'm able to flash in a Bowmaster with mana floating, and we move back my way. My draw step yields Court of Calling, which means all of their efforts were for nothing. I can tutor for another Yawgmoth and re-establish card advantage and firm control over the game. I play out my Cauldron and follow it up with Samwise, which means I'm a cat away from the combo kill. My opponent doesn't have any action, and all they can do is bring back Martyr with Abiding Grace and send it back. Drawing my second Court of Calling means the combo is now online. I court in response to Solitude targeting Yawgmoth and get the Cauldron Familiar. This triggers Samwise, which will make a food, and now I can sacrifice the Familiar to Yawgmoth and then return the cat from the graveyard by sacrificing the food that was made earlier. When the Familiar returns to play, it drains and gains for 1 life, which triggers the Samwise once again. Rinse, repeat, and we've got a loop. Alright, and we're up a game. Pretty easy. We're going to board out a Grist, a Patra, Wall of Roots, and Chatterfang, and bring in a bunch of artifact and enchantment removal. Looks fine to me, we'll keep it. Opponent with Fled Strand Fetch, Temple Garden, Shock, Thraben Inspector, Trigger, and got themselves a clue. I think we're going to start Mortuary here. We'll put Swamp into our graveyard. Field of Ruin, and they Kraken for 1. We're down 19. Draw Wall of Roots, I like that one. We'll play Blooming Marsh and get that wall out there. Opponent cycles Eagles, gets a Plains. There's the Plains we knew about. Skyclave, Apparition, they're going to get rid of our Wall of Roots. And BD, attacking for 1, down 18. Draw our second Yawg, play out a Colony Garden, Trigger, Cauldron, eat the Eagle, counter on our plan. Put him with a Stone Brain, attack for 2, down 16. And we found a third Yawgmoth, definitely can't let that Stone Brain off. Stone Brain allows our opponent to name a card in our deck and exile all of the copies. And with Yawgmoth being prime target numero uno, we can't allow that to happen. We use Haywire Might to exile the artifact, so the crisis is averted, for now. Unfortunately, I'm unable to cast any of my Yawgs over the next few turns, as they do a great job of stalling me out with a Cursed Totem. I have to spend my mana exiling the totem with Tear Asunder, and then Court of Calling gets a Young Wolf on their end step to use my mana efficiently. I finally get one of my 3 Yawgs down, but it's met with a Solitude when I attempt to loop draws with my Young Wolves. I draw into my 4th Yawgmoth along with Insidious Roots for the first time this league, and the Roots was actually a critical draw because my opponent just cast their second Stone Brain. Don't think there's anything we can do here. Yes. Alright, 3 exile, draw 3. Opponent with no attacks, Abiding Grace, gain a life, And we're going to eat Thraben Inspector. Opponent fetches during our upkeep, gets land tapped. Find a Boseiju. Start with attacks. Opponent takes 5, goes down to 15. 2-mana Insidious Roots, Wooded Foothills. We're just going to hold this Wall of Roots for now. No attacks. Binding Grace, gain a life, eat Solitude, counter on a Yawgmoth. We'll fetch end of turn. Overgrown Tomb tapped. The combination of Insidious Roots and Agatha's Soul Cauldron is the definition of synergy. Every time the Cauldron exiles a creature from our graveyard, the roots will trigger, making a plant. The beautiful thing about this is that the plant gets a +1/+1 counter, which means it will inherit the abilities consumed by the Cauldron. The opponent acknowledges this combo and exiles our Cauldron with their Haywire Might, but is unaware I can retool with a new Cauldron on my next turn. I attack him with the team and they block my 1/2 plant with their Solitude. I don't think they realized at the time, but I can exile Yawgmoth with the Cauldron, target my plant that was blocked, and it will get 2 +1/+1 counters because the roots triggers as well. Later, solid dude. Our board is leafy and imposing, and they do their best to stall with the One Ring, looking for a sweeper, but because Might is in their graveyard, in response to the activation we can eat their Might with the Cauldron and exile the ring. Tragic. They cast another ring on their next turn, which suffers the same fate as the previous one. They're just stalling at this point. Upkeep. I'm going to eat Ranger Captain, counter on the illusion. I'm going to sacrifice the Ranger Captain, put him with another Ranger Captain, trigger, get another Haywire Might, play the Might, exile the Cauldron. In turn we'll fetch. We'll get a basic Forest. Combat, attack for 6, double block of plant. They take 3 down to 11, Misty Rainforest. Put him with a land, back our way. So as you can see, we're in a little bit of a stalemate. I draw and play out a Grist, but they have the answer with Skyclave Apparition. I draw another Halfling and pass it back, and then they draw a Stonebrain and exile my Bowmasters for some odd reason. Back my way and I finally find a Scavenging Ooze, which also has synergy with Insidious Roots because it can exile cards from graveyards. Now that I have 2 copies of Roots, every time I do so, I'm going to make 2 plants. I start by exiling Bowmasters from my graveyard and then attack with the team, putting them down to 4 life. They top deck a Stone of Eric and immediately crack it to draw a card, needing to find an answer to my board. They whiff, and we win the match. So that was pretty easy, but this next match was quite a grind where Roots really showed its true power against one of the best decks in the format. Let's go. Start with a Mortuary, trigger, and we'll put Blooming Marsh on top. Opponent with Blood Crypt, tapped, untap, draw the Marsh, play out Hepatra, pass turn. Bloodstained Mire, fetch, basic Swamp, terminate Hepatra. Colony Garden, not too upset about that one. I'm going to play out the Insidious Roots, Colony Garden, pass turn back. Marsh Flats, fetch, Voidwalker, back our way. Drew into Terrace Under, not bad. I can use that to get rid of the ley line. I think I'm going to go Sam and Ooze this turn. Trigger the Sam, make a food. Opponent's turn, they play out a land. Fetch, basic Swamp, 4 mana, Grief. Imagine they take Yawg, attack for 3, down 17. Second Boseiju, not terrible. We're going to tear the Voidwalker and play out a Boseiju. Pass it back. Put him with a land and a Shieldred. No attacks. End of turn, we'll Boseiju the Leyline. Put him with Blood Crypt, tapped, untap. Draw Verdant, we'll lose 2. Play the Verdant, and I think we're just going to pass here. Opponent fetches, Blood Crypt, tapped. They gain 2 up to 18. Opponent with Kolaghan's Command, 2 damage to the Ooze and the food. We're going to respond with a fetch. With Underground Mortuary in the deck, my hope is that I can surveil a creature into the graveyard, eat it with the Ooze, and completely blow out my opponent. Court of Calling winds up being on top, which is a great card, but not a creature, so my Ooze is going to bite the dust. They Bowmaster down the plant and attack for 7, putting me to 10 and then 8 when Shieldred triggers during my draw step. It would be crazy to be able to stabilize with this board state. So here's my new plan. I'm going to Chord for Cauldron Familiar during attacks, get a food, move to blocks, and prevent as much damage as possible. And then I can return the Familiar post-combat and make a plant. Now I have to pray they can't get rid of Sam and try to turn things around from this position. Untap. Bowmaster, actually pretty good. Down to 4. Combat, I'm going to attack for 1. I'm not going to expose this Sam. Opponent's down 17. They gain 2 up to 19. Combat, attack with the team. I'm going to flash in a Bowmaster, trigger Sam, trigger Bowmaster. I'm going to hit my Cauldron Familiar. Familiar dies, turn the familiar, trigger roots, make a food, drain and gain. Move to blocks, like so. Damage, take nothing, wipe their board, end of turn, return familiar, triggers, drain and gain, make a plant. Untap, draw grist, excellent. We're gonna start with attacks. Let's keep Sam back, attack with plant, cauldron, familiar, and plant. Okay, they take 4, grist, minus, sack the familiar, kill the shieldred, return the familiar, trigger roots, trigger Sam, trigger the familiar. Pun with land, another shieldred. Not surprised by that. In return, we're gonna gain 3 life. Untap, draw Yawgmoth, lose 2, down to 6, uptick grist, Legion's End to the graveyard. Combat, attack with plants. They block the 3/4, take 3, go down to 9. Make a Yawgmoth, make another food. They gain 2 up to 11. 4 mana for a ley line, kind of annoying. Not the end of the world though. And a Ragavan. No attacks. End of turn, we'll gain 3, go up to 9. Untap. Draw land, go down to 7. We're gonna minus grist, sack the insect, kill shieldred. Combat, attack for 3, play a land, I'll pass turn. No attacks, back our way. Draw Bowmaster, combat, attack for 4. They're gonna block Yawgmoth, go down to 5. And they scoop it up. Roots did the job. So we're 2-0, and in rounds 3 and 4 we wind up getting paired against the same exact matchup, and the play patterns from both rounds were almost identical. So let's jump ahead to match 4 with a 3-0 record. Fetch, basic forest, and a halfling. Could be another mirror. Untap. Draw into a Bowmaster, which is really good. Wall of Roots, Verdant, and we'll just pass it on back. Put it with Twilight Mire. We'll fetch end of turn. Basic Swamp. We'll flash in our Bowmasters. They have a Bowmaster of their own, but I think this is still the move. Most likely. Untap. Draw another halfling. Play Wooded Foothills. Halfling, and we'll send it back. It's going to be a Bowmaster end of turn. We'll cord for 4 in response. Get a Yawg. Sack the Orc Army. Target the halfling. Bowmaster enters play. Target our Bowmaster. Kill their Bowmaster. We draw into a Wall of Roots. Bowmaster triggers. We're down to 14. And we're going to kill their halfling. Opponent untaps. 4 cards in hand. No land drop. No attack. We'll fetch end of turn. Mortuary. Trigger. We'll leave Verdant on top. Untap. Draw the Verdant. 2 mana for a Cauldron. Verdant. Fetch a Forest. Wall of Roots. We're going to discard Grist. Hold priority. Proliferate. Eat Grist. We'll put counters on the halfling. Proliferate resolves. Bump up the halfling. Make an insect. Insidious Roots to the graveyard. Attack for 2. Back the other way. 2 mana, another Bowmaster. Trigger. We're down to 10. No attacks. End of turn. I'm going to cord for 2. Hold priority. Get rid of the Bowmaster. Opponent with another Bowmaster. They are Bowmastering on all cylinders here. Put me down to 8. Kill their Bowmaster. Draw another Yawg. Down to 7. Down to 6. Cord for 2. And we're going to get a Sam. Oh, I was supposed to get Blood Artist. That was silly. Untap. Draw Blooming Marsh. Make an insect. Cauldron familiar to the graveyard. Okay. Wall of Roots. Play Yawg. We'll keep the old one. Trigger Sam. Return the familiar. Trigger Sam. Cauldron. Eat Yawg. Counter on Sam. Kill the Bowmaster. Trigger on the stack. Turn the familiar. And here we go again. Alright, opponent scoops it up, successfully comboed. Alright, we're going to bring in Removal and Ooze, board out Grist, Roots, and Chatterfang. This 7's too slow. We have to mulligan. This is very good. I think we're going to get rid of Hepatra. Opponent's on a mulligan to 6 as well. Blooming Marsh, Halfling. Draw Grist, Misty, Fetch, Shock, Halfling. Opponent untaps, Takanuma, Fatal Push the Halfling, 2 mana, and a Cauldron. Draw a Beseiju, Verdant Catacombs, fetch, get a Swamp, Wall of Roots. Opponent eats our halfling, pass it back. Haywire Might, sure. Alright, we draw a second Yawg. They have 2 in hand. I think we're going to play out this Beseiju. A little risky with the Grist here, but we will uptick. Hopefully don't put something good in the graveyard. We don't. It's going to be a Bowmaster. Trigger, hit down the insect.
The Cauldron has added a wrinkle into navigating the Yawgmoth mirror match.
It used to be the first one to Yawg wins, but now, if Grist were to mill another Grist or a Yawgmoth when Cauldron's in play, the Cauldron inheriting the ability of the creature in the graveyard is enough to win the game on its own, and for that reason, we don't want to expose our Yawgmoth to removal until we can wipe their board first. Doing everything we can to keep them off 4 mana. Opponent has nothing else, back to us. Another Yawg, play out a wall, uptick Grist, wall into the graveyard. We're just going to pass back. We're going to get Hapatra with this cord. They do nothing. Misty, fetch, Forest, 4 mana. There's a Yawg, cord for 2, Patra. They scoop it up, 4-0. So we're playing for the 5-0 and get paired into one of the best decks in the format, Amulet Titan, the big meta deck that can consistently kill on turn 3 with Primeval Titan. Game 1 is tough in this matchup because we don't have a lot of ways to interact with what they're doing. And sure enough, on turn 3, Primeval Titan with double Amulet in play, along with Dryad of the Elysian Grove, is a quick death for me. Game 2 was a different story as my opponent mulliganed down to 5, which gave me enough time to build out my board with double Halfling and Samwise. The most powerful card we have access to in the matchup, Force of Vigor, also did its thing, destroying an Amulet and a Dryad on their side of the table. This gave me the extra time I needed to use Chord of Calling for the Cauldron Familiar and have a follow-up chord for Yawgmoth on my next turn. So we're on to game 3, and the trophy is on the line. Opponent's on a mulligan to 6. This hand's really interesting. No pressure, but interaction. I think I'm going to keep. Could be risky. Opponent leads on a Valakut. Find a chord. Pretty good with these Gardens. Garden into play. Opponent with the Gardens. Into a Cursed Totem. We're fine with that. Find a Halfling. Let's play that out to another Garden. Pass turn. So my plan from here is to use the Chord of Calling in my hand to get a Fulminator Mage before destroying the Cursed Totem with Maelstrom Pulse, because it's a more efficient use of my mana when sequenced in that fashion. If I can then find an Agatha's Soul Cauldron to eat my Fulminator, I should be able to lock up this 5-0. And that Cauldron gets our Fulminator. Shocking Temple Garden. Yawg, Cauldron, eat Fulminator, counter on a plant, get rid of Gruul Turf, pass turn. Okay, they have an Amulet. They'll add 2 mana. Okay, they have 1 mana floating. I'm gonna look for Force here. Sacrifice the plant, sacrifice the Halfling. We found a Beseiju. It's gonna be 4 mana. Growth Chamber back to hand. Hopefully just a ring, and it is. Phew. Okay, we're okay with this. They draw a card. Great, that's scary. So this is gonna give them access to Beseiju. We know Beseiju and something else in hand. 2, bounce the Valakut, back our way. Draw a Verdant, play a Wolf. There's a Beseiju. Activate Cauldron, eat a Halfling, counter on the Yawg, get a Mortuary, land to the graveyard. Wolf into play, draw a card, found a Chord. Chord gets us a Patra, make a Snake, more snakes. Okay, we drew a Wolf. Wolf means we can pretty much go infinite from here. We can also just exile the ring, land, wall. I think we're gonna fetch basic. Wall, Chalice, pass turn. Ring's gonna deal them 1, draw 2, 5 in hand. And they scoop it up. We got the trophy with Cat Sam, Vegetation, Yawg. Let's crack some chests to celebrate this victory. I want to thank you for tuning in today. This has been a blast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will see you all again very soon. And until then, you know the deal. Be well, my friends.